Joseph, how's it going?
Good, man. Nice to see you, John.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Straight out of Easton, Pennsylvania, right?
That's it, man.
Live and direct from the studio.
Yes, sir.
How's the weather out in PA today?
It's a little hot today, but not as brutal as it has been recently. So happy to have a little reprieve from the extreme heat.
That's exactly right. I feel you. Well, thank you so much for tapping in. Obviously, you and I have been talking about this pod for a long time, basically since almost, I want to say, we met in the springtime of last year at Mott Projects in Catskill with Eric Summer.
Yeah, yeah, man. So first off, thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, that was cool, man. Eric's such a great dude and has such a wonderful eye for art and community. And yeah, that was really cool to meet you out there. And just another testament to him and his character bringing people together. So yeah, man, happy to know you, happy to be here.
1000%. Well, as I always like to do for the first question in any of these podcasts, where are you from?
Yeah, so I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, coastal town, southeast.
I've been there, love it. Beautiful college town. Kind of reminds me a lot of where I grew up in Southern California with the scene of, surf culture, skate, all that. Also the Tar Heels and all the hoops and whatever sports action. You kind of grew up arguably in like one of the most sports driven parts of the world, maybe.
Yeah, I mean college basketball for sure. You're kind of born into a team growing up there, and my dad went to UNC, so I was born a Tar Heel, and that was definitely driven into me at a young age. So yeah, it was cool growing up around that, and watching games with my dad and family, and as a kid, that was when we got to stay up late. It was a game on, so it's cool. Yeah,
As long as it's not Duke, right?
that's it, man. No Duke, no State. All Tar Heels.
While we're on the topic, off the top of my head, obviously Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, James Worthy, Rasheed Wallace, Stackhouse, Vince Carter, who are for you some of the all-time players from Chapel Hill?
Yeah, so you got to shout out Montrose. He held it down in the center for a few years there. Had a little run in the NBA. Didn't translate as good as maybe he had hoped, but yeah, definitely a UNC legend.
Yep, and he did hold it down in the paint for the Celtics for a time. Shout out! I brought home national championship for the Tar Heels with George Lynch. Remember that very fondly. Um, and you actually are still somebody that follows the soccer world pretty closely.
Yeah, yeah, I love soccer, man, and just kind of love watching the game. If I have free time, I'll watch any game. It doesn't matter. USL, Dutch league, the Eredivisie, of course the Premier League when I can catch it. But yeah, man, just really love watching the game, and kind of connect to the poetry and beauty of it. There's this rigid poetic quality to soccer that I think is really beautiful.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody without question is so impressed by the U.S. women's national team and their run of dominance. I mean, you could equate them to like whatever it's UConn women's basketball or even the Chicago Bulls, MJ in his heyday or whatever. Um, Being that you are a follower of soccer and being that the U.S. men's team has had so many kind of, I think, like ebbs and flows, where would you kind of analyze the state of the men's side for the U.S. right now?
Yeah, I think it's in flux right now. Our yeah, it's tough, because we've got more players playing in high quality leagues and for better teams than we ever have. But as a cohesive unit, I think our peak was, oh gosh, it must have been the 2002 World Cup with Bruce Arena. And it was a lot of guys playing in MLS, our domestic league here, and just a couple guys playing in Europe. But as a team, um, they came together and were greater than the sum of their parts, so to speak. Yeah, and Arena just had those guys rolling. Got to the quarterfinals of that World Cup, still our high watermark. Um, so we've got a new coach, Mauricio Pochettino, and I think he's still feeling everything out and kind of figuring out what pieces work together. So I'm excited for the upcoming World Cup here in the U.S. I think if Pochettino can get those guys on the same page, kind of working as a unit, we've got a chance to go far.
I love to see it. I think that I think you and I have chatted about this previously, where one, like I remember you telling me the US does have this kind of pay to play system for people to even just get into it. And I think as a result, to probably some extent, a lot of kids that, guys and gals that would be probably phenoms, we don't know, maybe just haven't gotten into the sport the way that they do so fluidly in other nations.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of kind of unique hurdles as a soccer culture. Um, and it's a matter of figuring out how to make it all meld together. There's so many different uh soccer influence in this country, starting from kind of like uh the Scottish bastion of soccer, which would be Kearney, New Jersey. Um, More World Cup players from the U.S. have come from that tiny city than anywhere else in the country. So that style, and then you have uh, the Latino style that's prevalent in Texas and California. And then you kind of just have this American grinded out sort of work ethic sort of style that's prevalent in the rest of the country, Midwest, Southeast. And so it's there's a lot of influences, and I think that can work to our advantage, but it's also there's not just this distinct style of play. Like Spain's got the way they play, England has the way they play, and the youth systems, they all play into that. So everyone's kind of on the same page. Whereas in the U.S., you've got kids from middle class and maybe more affluent backgrounds that are playing, in the pay to play club soccer world, and they're developed, what one way, and then you've got the kids from Latino backgrounds that are playing pickup and playing in the Latino leagues, and they're playing a whole different kind of brand. And so it's figuring out how to marry uh, all these parts together into a machine that works as a whole. So, yeah,
No, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely not like an expert of the game. I retired my soccer cleats at probably the age of 8 or something like that, rec league styles. But uh, you can tell, yeah, like basketball, soccer, probably ice hockey, lacrosse, any of these games where there is this natural sense of flow. You can equate it probably to like members of a band that need to either be tight and in tune or not, you know?
yeah, that's a good way to put it for sure.
So,
Yeah.
so speaking of influences and sports, I'll say sports, but that adjacent, skateboarding is something that kind of hooked you at a pretty young age. So how did you get from rooting for the Tar Heels to then suddenly, finding yourself pretty deep in that world?
Yeah, so like a lot of kids in the States, I grew up playing soccer. I've got an older brother, 3 years older than me. He played soccer. So I was kind of following his path a little bit. And yeah, I love playing. But yeah, I guess around the age of like 12, I saw some dudes skating, and I was just like drawn to it. You know, there was a spark, uh, and it was just like I wanted to be a part of that. You know, that looks incredibly appealing to me. And you know, I had some angst and kind of some creative ideas and things like that. And when I saw it, it just kind of all came together. I'm like, oh, like this is sort of the vessel to let that creativity come out and explore it. And yeah, so it was really, really great, man. It's informed my whole life that really since. So yeah, thankful for it.
That's amazing. I mean, I uh I think I mentioned this to you. I went to Torrey Pines High School, shout out, go Falcons. Also the alma mater of Tony Hawk. In third grade, like Gleaming the Cube days, Christian Slater, all that. Tony Hawk did an ollie over Principal Ludwizak, and there was the elementary school principal, trying to hold up chakas and kind of do the pump up for the crowd. But I mean, growing up around some of that, and I was a jock, I um but I had such admiration, like you said, for one, the artfulness that went into pretty much everything. Um, and also kind of this sense of there is a definite code that exists in that world. And I think it's a code that's also one that's well earned because, from a football player's perspective, I don't know if there's a whole lot of things in this world that are like more hardcore than seeing somebody who's a dedicated skater.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. And it kind of offered this lane to be creative and have a solo expression, but then also be part of a community. And I was really drawn to that aspect. And yeah, like I said, I kind of had this inner creativity that I didn't necessarily know what it was, but it was a feeling. And yeah, skateboarding provided an opportunity to explore that. And yeah, and through that culture, I learned about, music and books and art and just all these really, really great things that have been so informative and dear to me in my life.
So you're in that world, you're working for, I know that you worked at a skate shop for some time. And then what were some of the brands that you were also contributing to with graphics and marketing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I worked at NC Skates, which was the only 100% skateboard shop in Wilmington. Shout out NC Skates. And yeah, so I started working there when I was like 15, 16, and then slowly kind of had a bigger role there and really got to be um, at the center of the skateboard scene in Wilmington, which was really cool. A lot of incredible people have come out of that scene. Kenny Hughes, Chet Childress, and then just a lot of just rippers that no one's ever heard of. So that was great, man. And then through that, I started uh, riding for Saturday Skateboards, which was at that time a small regional brand. A little later, they got some funding and became a little more national and international, but still a very small kind of boutique brand. So that was cool to kind of be on that ride. Uh, and I had started to explore art and take that more seriously when I was maybe 18. Started painting every day, and that came about similar to how skateboarding did, really, where it was just I started to see this thing and felt a pull towards it, and just kind of followed that. And so somehow I talked the owner of Saturday into hiring me to be the creative director. And so, did some graphics with those guys and, had a nice little run with them for a couple years.
No, I loved hearing about that because as you and I have said before, um, for sure, I think we've all met a lot of people who have gotten into art and then, maybe like, I don't know, it seems like your two worlds with skate and art have always been in parallel, and for sure overlapping. But one of the things that stood out from one of our previous conversations, was you telling me that even though you loved everybody that you worked with, even though you loved the company, even though you were a passionate skater, that you were listening to some whispers that were just telling you to keep pushing things further with your art, and that no matter how you sliced it, I don't want to say that every day waking up, going to the office was not what you wanted, but here you are in your studio. Clearly you were willing to keep pushing yourself forward, outside of that world.
Yeah, just I've always kind of lived my life through emotions, better or worse, and kind of trusting emotions, and it's got me in trouble sometimes, but not really thinking things out with my head. Just going where the feel and going in the direction that feels right, and not knowing cognitively why that pull is there. It's just saying, hey, there's a pull, and I should probably follow it. Um, so, yeah, when I was in my early 20s and I was working for Saturday, I was painting. The owner was super cool, and he, let me set up the studio at the warehouse, and so we had this little skate park in there, and then next to that was my little studio, and so that was super cool, and that was my first kind of like legit studio where I could explore stuff in a bigger space, yeah, I just felt the pull, as wonderful as skateboarding was, it's your body's only got so much time, and I was never the dude with, the most natural ability, uh, and it just yeah, just kind of following the urge and of painting.
Right.
Um, yeah, so that's yeah.
And so for you, because you've mentioned this to me before, talk about the influence that skating has had for you as you literally like walk down a street, and how beneficial that like different sense of, I don't want to say like geometry or earthly perception or whatever, but how have those two backgrounds for you been beneficial, particularly for your art making?
Yeah, so, I think in both pursuits, you're looking at the world in an adjacent way. And skateboarding, you become so I don't know if mired's the right word, but that's the word I'm gonna use. You become so mired in looking at structures and terrain in a different way, and saying, how can I use this? What can be done here? How could I utilize this piece of architecture in skateboarding? And so, ever since the first day I picked up a skateboard, it was, you're driving down the road in the back of your mom's car, you're looking out the window like, "Oh, that's a spot. That could be a spot. Oh, you can do this there, that there." Um, and so, that always sticks with you. I still, I haven't jumped on a skateboard in over a decade. Had some bad back injuries and subsequently a lot of surgery, so that's kinda off the table for me these days, but, I still look, and I still think, and you kinda act out the maneuvers in your head like, "Oh, you can hit that and then go into there and whatever." Um, and with art, it's no different, I've and it's kind of been a seamless transition of looking at the world, and so now when I'm walking down the street, like, I'm seeing skate spots, but I'm also seeing like, "Oh, look at how the green of that leaf interacts with the beige of that concrete block behind it. Like, there's a charge there, there's something to that. Oh, look at the shape of this crack in the sidewalk and how that interacts with, the passing car or whatever." And so, I'm still seeing skate spots and how to utilize things architecturally in my mind for skateboarding, and that's I don't think that's ever going to go away. But I'm also seeing, forms and color and words and shapes and picking up on that energy and how those things interact and picking out the charge, and then storing it somewhere in my hard drive to fish out later in the studio.
No, that makes total sense. And speaking, I love that word charge. Like, um, speaking of architecture plus that charge, you decided to move to New York City circa 07, 08, which given the economic, you know, events during that time period was obviously just a really unique time for the city as well. A lot of tumultuous kind of just turnover, I guess you would say to some extent. And I remember you just telling me that you just threw yourself into that, just like, I guess anybody like anybody with that classic skateboarding mentality would, without even necessarily knowing how to navigate that scene. And just so explain, I don't know, explain being in that moment where like you were clearly, experienced enough to like you said, be the creative director of this brand. You're an athlete, but boom, now you're just saying, all right, I'm pushing forward. I'm going to go to New York, and there you are. So like maybe kind of take us back to that moment.
Yeah, so I had some buddies that, I grew up skateboarding with that were living in New York at the time, in Brooklyn, and I went up there on a skate trip to hang out with those guys, and I felt at home. I never growing up in North Carolina. Yeah, I'm thankful for where I grew up, and I think Wilmington was a great place to kind of come of age, but I never felt at home there. Um, and then shortly after high school, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where Saturday was located, and yeah, that's the largest metropolitan city in the state. And it scratched the itch a little bit, culturally and things like that. But again, it just kind of didn't feel like home. Um, and so when I went on that first trip to New York, uh, I, it, I don't even know how to describe the feeling, but I felt like I was home. You know, it just walking down the street, just kind of the yeah, the vibrancy and machinations of the city. It just felt so comforting. And so I kind of knew, I'm like, man, fuck, maybe I gotta move here. Again, just kind of following these sensations and emotional feelings and putting that in the forefront. And then through Saturday, the skateboard company, they sent me up there a couple times to talk to different shops and that were carrying the brand and things like that. So I had a few opportunities to go back to the city and I just every time I was there, I felt at home, you know. Um, and at this point, I had quite a few friends that I knew growing up that were living there, so we would get together and hang out. And yeah, I'd go to museums, check out some shows, and it was just like, all right, fuck, I got to make this happen. um, so yeah, man, packed up and kind of went up there without much of a plan, other than just to find a place to live and get a studio going. And yeah, I was kind of at the right had the right blend of eagerness and naivete. I wasn't smart enough to know I shouldn't do it. And yeah, so that was that.
So just to read off some stats, you told me you moved to Bushwick, 5 dudes in a 2 bedroom, uh, and no heat, no AC. um, and I love what you said about the fact that you credited or credit that space or maybe that some of that time period of even taking everything that you were doing more seriously.
Yeah, so I moved to Bushwick and I ended up linking up with some guys from Erie, Pennsylvania, of all places, and they were musicians. And they had a spot in a little apartment in Bushwick, so I ended up staying with those guys. And yeah, it was like a rotating cast. You kind of know the scene. Every 4 or 5 months, someone would move out, someone would move in. But yeah, we kind of had a derelict scene going there for a minute. I was sleeping in the living room. We had bed sheets hanging from the ceiling to partition off the space. Um, and we did have heat, and I don't know if we had AC in that. I think we did have AC in that apartment, but we were all so broke, man. Like I remember we one month we had a $10 electric bill, and that was like a celebration. We're like, yeah, we're partying off of this, dude. This is like we did it. We beat the system. And we would take out the we would take out the light bulbs, so we couldn't turn on certain lights. Like it was like a whole thing, like, oh, we're going to keep everything super super low. And yeah, so that was cool. And I was paying nothing for that space, just like literally a couple $100 a month to camp out in the living room there. And then I had a studio in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, at that time, a tiny, tiny studio. I think it was originally meant to be someone's little cubicle office, but nonetheless, I crammed in there with power saws and um, all my gear, and got to work.
Made it happen. Do you remember, like, I trust that there were probably a few things that like really hit you from an influence perspective, once you got there, that maybe you knew about, but you just maybe weren't as like deep, immersed in it, or just didn't learn as much about it. Who were some of the influences from that time in your life that obviously you've carried forward even today?
Yeah, so I think those first couple years, it was kind of just everyone in the city's got to hustle. Like everyone's there for something, and everyone's kind of going for something more or less, and that's contagious. It's like, all right, like people aren't fucking around. Like it's time to put your head down, get to work, kind of soak up the feeling, and figure out a way to spit it back out in the studio. And I was there for my early and mid to late 20s, so it was such a great time to kind of take stuff in. Um, and then the paradox of that is also that there's a party every night. There's there's always something going. Every day you're getting hit up like, yo, this is going on. And so it's easy to kind of get swallowed up in the party too. So, and I did a little bit, but then you learn how to kind of balance that. You learn how to set boundaries, and you learn how to protect your studio time, and you learn how to say like, no, like I'm here to make work. Like I'm not here to talk shit and drink beer. Which is cool. Some of that is totally right on, and especially at that age, I think it's important to be out there and be wandering around early in the morning, and meeting all kinds of different people, and soaking up experiences, and uh maybe finding yourself in some seedy situations that maybe aren't that cool or safe, but you can take something from that, especially when you're that age. Um, so yeah, just kind of taking all that in, and then going into the studio, and figuring out a way to throw that energy and sensation in the work. And so yeah, it was a lot of that. And then I got linked up with a gallery in Miami at that time, called Stash Gallery, and they're no longer around, but they had a cool little run. And so I was going down to Miami and doing shows with them, and going down for Art Basel, and they would always have some sort of uh, group show, or something cooking during the week of Basel. And through being down there, I met the artist Joe Strasser, and we became immediate friends. You know, it was like we had known each other forever. There was just kind of this spark and sort of like, oh, like the universe wants us to know each other kind of feeling. So we struck up a really strong friendship right from the go. Um, and he's a little good bit older than me. So he, you know, he had some influences and kind of turned me on to some stuff that I wasn't hip to yet. That was informative. And then fast forward a couple years, he ended up moving to the city. And he and his partner got this building in Clinton Hill, you know, in the outskirts of Bed-Stuy, this old spice factory. It was a four-story building, I think like, you know, 1,800 square feet each floor, something like that. And it was kind of this wild situation where his partner Noelle, who dear friend of mine and just, you know, all around righteous person, her her brother had bought this building, I don't know, in the 70s or something. And he was an artist at the time, still is. And yeah, he and his ex-wife, who actually passed away in that building, yeah, they bought it. And long story short, he ended up remarrying a woman from Singapore and moved there, and then she ended up buying the building. So it's just this wild situation where there was this vacant building, and they kind of didn't know what to do with it. It was a little, you know, it was kind of derelict at this point. This building, it wasn't. It's going to take a lot of money to get it to a place to sell it or really do anything with it. It was zoned industrial, but the industry had kind of left that block. So it was kind of this shell. So we ended up moving in, you know, and we paid peanuts, dude, which was crazy, and we kind of had the run of the space. Um, but we were on our own, you know. If something broke, if the ceiling was leaking, if something was going on, it was just like we were on our own, you know. Wintertime, it was, you know, putting on a bunch of heavy coats and getting in a sleeping bag, then getting under the covers, you know, and trying to figure out how to paint without your paint freezing. You know, so there were some obstacles, but it was really great, man, and very informative and an incredibly creative atmosphere, you know.
I can only imagine. And I think what's so what's so refreshing about your perspective on everything is that um it's so genuine that you embrace the notion, and not even to sound, whatever, cliche, it, the notion of being a lifelong learner. And you've talked a lot about um how you've when you moved to New York, you started reading a lot, whether you were on a train or a bus. And you mentioned a number of times to me this idea of Catcher in the Rye and Holden Caulfield and Holden's teacher, professor character, and how you can kind of almost, in a sense, like relate to the two of them. And so like I said, I find that all refreshing because there's never an element ever whenever you and I have chatted about you looking at anything in this journey. Sure, yeah, you get, like, anybody gets like pissed off about, like you said, paint freezing or something. But like at the same time, um, you said that you during that time period, you learned to get out of your own way, and these are your words, and that you learn to let the urges travel through you instead of letting them dictate the pain.
Yeah, so you know, I got into art through skateboarding. That's kind of how I was exposed to it. Um, the skate shop I was working at would get promo copies of Juxtaposed magazine. Same publisher as Thrasher and Slap, and you know, so they would send promo copies for us, and I would just eat them up. I'm like, whoa, there's this world out here, you know, and that's kind of how I started to learn about the art world. And growing up and there's a big crossover between that kind of juxtaposed scene and skateboarding. And growing up where I did, it was kind of like, I thought art was like, portrait drawings and seagulls and sand dunes, which is right on, but it didn't hit me, like it didn't speak to me where I was. And seeing the being exposed to juxtapose at that time, because I was like, 15, 16, 17, and I was like, whoa, like this is like I feel the pull, like again, that pull that I felt when I saw skateboarding for the first time. Like I'm feeling this sensation. And so, following that, um, getting, into art through that. And then from there you're learning about Basquiat. And then, you dig into Basquiat and you're like, oh, this dude was looking at this guy named Cy Twombly. Like, let's check him out. And so you kind of just keep pulling on this thread, and it just opens up this really like kind of beautiful world. Um, and again, just kind of following these sensations and pulling on the thread. But I think I'm getting a little off track here. But get back to your question about getting out of my own way. So I was in the beginning, I was doing what all early artists do, is I was kind of replicating things I had seen. And I was, like forming an aesthetic that was based around skateboarding and what I was seeing in juxtapose. I was using a lot of spray paint, cutting out stencils, and it was kind of a lot of graphic inspired work. It wasn't graphics, but it was, graphic adjacent maybe. And, lack of better word, maybe lowbrow. Um, and so, being in New York and again, tugging on that string and just kind of learning more, yeah, you start to see it's like, oh, like art and painting isn't this thing that like I'm here to dominate. Like I'm not here to control the output necessarily. I'm here to be a conduit for some sort of cosmic energy. And it's not about me exerting my will onto the canvas in an attempt to create something that looks cool. It's not about looking cool. It's not about something that looks cool. Uh, it's about being a vessel for honesty. It's about boiling humanity down to its essence. And to do that, you got to step aside. You gotta lose the ego. You gotta become a tool for something higher than yourself. Um, I'm not religious, but like, there's an energy, there's an energy in this universe. And, sometimes you gotta ride that energy and let it come through you. So that's kind of what I mean when I'm talking about getting out of my own way.
Yeah, and I I know that you've got an inherent like understanding of that kind of humility that we talked about really from things like skateboarding too, or surfing, where, you know, the tall poppies always get cut down and, people tell you, hey, don't claim something if it's not there. And ultimately just like kind of stay out the way and do your thing. You know what I mean? Like don't get ahead of yourself. And so I love what you also said about that, even though you've clearly followed this voice, followed these whispers, um, you still consider yourself um to be on this long road, and you're what you do is, in your words, still emerging, and yet here you are developing these connections in places like Switzerland and going to places like Art Basel, and talk about how you know found your way into some of those arenas, I think you could say, um you know coming from that building with the leaky roof.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of things in this world are chance, right? But you've got to be in a position to where there's opportunity with that chance, right? Um, so you know, Joe Strasser and I, we had this studio space, high ceilings, you know, thousands of square feet. Like we were making big work. We were working all the time. Uh, and he was out in Soho and he had a painting with him and it was just on the streets, you know, and this guy, Hans Welly, saw his work and was just saw the piece and was like, yo, like let's talk. Like I really like this piece. Like, you know, like and they got to talking and next thing you know, Joe invited him to the studio. And they came out to the studio the next day and I was there obviously and yeah, he shows up and we've got hundreds of pieces, you know. We've been painting, we've been working. You know, it's not like he showed up and we had a couple paintings on the wall. Um, you know, it was a place of work and it was a place of honesty. And I think that he picked up on that. And we didn't know who he was. We didn't know what kind of connections he had or uh, we just knew that he was a super nice guy that had an incredible aura to him that liked our work, you know. So yeah, he and his wife Marguerite, they came and you know, walked around the studio, asked some questions, and yeah, we had some great conversations, and you know, that was I think he might have bought a couple pieces, but you know, we thought maybe that was that. And it was like that was cool, man. We met this awesome dude that came by and appreciated what we were doing. Um, Next thing we know, we get a call from him, and he wanted to offer us an exhibition in Basel, Switzerland, a large scale exhibition that he wanted to put together the next year. And um, you know, he started telling us a little bit about himself, and turns out he was on the board of Art Basel. Um, you know, he was the former art buyer for UBS Bank, and you know, and then he loosely let slide that the last exhibition he curated was a Van Gogh retrospective. So we're like, what? Like this is wild. Like this dude digs what we're doing, and he's just such an awesome guy. And um, but again, you know, there's so much talk in the art world. You know, uh, I think any artist can attest to this that you know if everything people say and promise to you as an artist came true, like we would all be billionaires, you know. We would all be having shows at the Guggenheim, you know. And so it's kind of hard to judge, but you know, we got a really good vibe from Hans Swelly, and yeah, it turns out this dude was under promising and over delivering. And next thing you know, we're on the plane to Basel, and we had a great first show there. Around 60 pretty large pieces in a beautiful space, and yeah, that was in 2011, and just met some incredible people and a lot of friendships that we still have today. And yeah, and then subsequently we organized exhibitions in another exhibition in Basel in 2015, and then again in Zurich in 2018. And yeah, and so you know, financially that was a huge thing. You know, all of a sudden it wasn't like, you know, let me dig through the couch cushions for quarters to grab a slice of pizza. It was like, okay, we've got a little, you know, I didn't have money, you know, there was no like, I wasn't living large, but it was like, okay, here's a little bit of security, you know, like now I can go buy the paint that I want to buy instead of like using the paint that someone threw out down the street, you know. So there was a little bit of stability there financially, and that offered the chance to kind of dive in. But more importantly than that, it was the recognition from Hans Welly and someone of his knowledge and background and stature saying, like, I believe in you, like, I think what you're doing is important. And I think you're a damn good painter. And so kind of hearing that, and not only just hearing it, but seeing it, and and seeing him put that into action, um yeah, it gave me a lot of confidence, and I still carry that confidence from him to this day in the studio, where it's like, yeah, like emotionally, it gave me the courage, like, yeah, you are on the right path, like, trust your instincts. It's not an easy path. There's ups and downs, but it's a righteous and worthy path, and I'm thankful to be on.
Speaking of a path, um, just to kind of touch on the fact that a lot of the work that you do, I love the description of the non-objective work, and the influence that you have had from the beats. I mean, I told you Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac, one of my all-time favorites. On the road, Lonesome Traveler, um, and yeah, I mean, I think just talk about the use of language in your work, and um, yeah, how that's a thread for you that I sense you drive energy from.
Yeah, of course. So it's it kind of goes back to this charge, this visceral sensation, and when I'm looking at a painting that hits me, you get this feeling. It's like this it's in your solar plex. It's not a mental feeling. It's a physical and emotional feeling right in your gut. And that you get that from literature too. You get that from birds, and so it's kind of like, yeah, chasing that sensation and not delineating where it's coming from. you know uh Words are function like paintings function in how I view the world, and how I move about it. And like Kerouac's great for that. Some of his books are trudge. You're kind of trudging along and you're not getting much, but for some reason you keep going, and then next thing you know, you read two words and you get completely floored. Your whole world shifts. Time stops. Like, all of a sudden you're kind of drunk with these two words. Um, so it's kind of just recognizing that charge, and also getting that charge from composition, color, and form, and then saying, I guess, coming to the realization myself that, like, there's no difference between words and form. They all function and carry the same weight on a picture plane. Uh, Letters are shapes, they're forms. And so now you can use those shapes and forms compositionally the same way you would, a non-objective of form and an abstraction, you know? So then it was like just following these visceral urges and sensations and letting things come out, following and collecting things that have a charge. So, I, I mean, for decades, and still to this day, I keep a running list of words that I see or read somewhere, or that kind of float into my head from outer space, and it's a palette. you know it's no different than collecting paint colors. And so during my process in the studio, I'm referencing it like a palette, you know? And a question I get a lot in my work is like, what comes first, like the words or the the abstract forms or the colors or like how does that work? And yeah, it's like they all kind of come when they're needed or when they want to come. I've never seen a word somewhere and said to myself, I'm going to make a painting with that word. But what I have done and what I do on a daily basis is I see a word and if I feel a charge, I throw it into the palette, I write it down. And then when during the painting process, oftentimes words kind of just fall out of the sky onto the canvas. And, it's not my job to say, what does this mean? How does this work? It's my job to let it land where it wants to land. So that's a way that the text ends up on the pieces. But then also it's a matter of like, you're working out, I'm and for all intents and purposes, I'm a formalist in the studio. I'm making paintings with color, composition, and shapes. So it's being in the moment with the piece and looking at this palette of words that I've amassed over decades and feeling the charge, like a word will tell me it wants where it wants to go. Um, and likewise, sometimes I I'll find a word or a coupling of words or a sentence or whatever, and I think it's just incredibly powerful. And I'll think like, oh, like this is going to end up somewhere, and it doesn't. So you never know. It's just kind of following these sensations. So yeah, getting out of your way and back to kind of the beat ideology. It's like, yeah, get on the road, man. You don't have to have a destination. Like, go where you feel compelled to go. You hit a crossroads. Like, go the direction you feel compelled to go. The car wants to go left. Go left. Fuck it. Like, it's kind of trusting that the wave of the universe is going to carry you where maybe it wants you to go, and it's not up to you to dictate those choices. It's up to you to be willing to be on the ride.
I'm gonna well said. I'm gonna recount another great quote that I think relates that you told me, and this is pertaining to Jack Kerouac's Subterraneans, and uh, you said something to the effect of "in the dirt, but looking up at a higher consciousness."
Yeah, you know, uh, yeah, I think the willingness to be muddy, but then also the willingness to embrace the cosmos, you know. Uh, what is the dirt and the soil if not a reflection of the cosmos? I mean, you want to talk about the fungal and mycelium network underneath us, like, come on, it's a mirror to the cosmos. Like, we're all living in this sort of like Russian doll universe. And every time humans, as a very young species in the grand scheme of things, every time we push technology to the point where we can look further out, there's more. Every time we uh, develop the technology to look further in, there's more. So it's like, it's limitless in both ways. Um, and that might make you and us feel small, but I think there's a lot of liberation and freedom in being a small thing. So embracing that, and embracing like, we're a speck of dust on a fucking cloud of wind. Like, enjoy, be honest, be fucking cool to people, and enjoy, right?
Hell yeah, enjoyment is key in everything that we do, because otherwise, what's like you said, what's the fucking point? You have two shows coming up. First, let's talk about what's going on at Cedar Crest College. Uh, Brian Wiggins, September 12th, the Center for Visual Research. Excuse me. Talk about that a little bit if you can.
Yeah, so Center for Visual Research is a just incredibly beautiful gallery space that's part of Cedar Crest College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And the guy that runs the space, he's also a professor down there and a friend of mine, Brian Wiggins. He's a great painter. Um, yeah, really, really great painter. Maybe one of the best colorists working right now, in my humble opinion. But yeah, he reached out some time ago, wanted to organize a show, and out of my respect and admiration for him, and coupled with the gallery space, of course, it was a no brainer, and so super happy to have it coming up, opening on September 12th. Um, and yeah, it's an opportunity to kind of play with a bigger space. It's all naturally lit. The ceiling is kind of thinking it in my head. It's kind of arched and it's all glass. So it's just kind of this incredible space. And that depending on the time of day and the season you're there, you're going to have a different experience. And I get a kick out of that. I think that's a awesome positive. Yeah, and just kind of playing with what I do, just diving in. I think this body of work is maybe a little more deduced than some of my past work. I'm still on the same train, but maybe shedding some of the carts along the way, and kind of really trying to get down to the crux of what it is that I'm saying, or what's traveling through me rather. And yeah, playing little some sculptural elements. I've got some plants that are going to be coming into the exhibition. I'm trying to relay this kind of freedom and possibilities that come with the studio atmosphere into the gallery space. So that's kind of where like the sculptural element of plants and books are going to play a role. um, pull the curtain back a little bit, and so yeah, real excited for that.
That's awesome. And personally, I'm excited to see you in person in New York City on September 9. So, just to plug it here,
Yeah,
kind of officially. So the name of the show, open bracket SD/LA/NY, comma, sincerely, end bracket. Um, and it's CKTH, Mott Projects, a number of folks that, we've talked about in the past, really excited about this. And I think for starters, just this pod alone, I think is completely appropriate for the spirit of that show, because that show is all given these different cities that we're referencing in the name of the exhibition. It's all about these sliding glass doors of how we create and how we absorb certain things and then produce the output. And sometimes that output doesn't happen in the first zip code or even the second one. Like a lot of the analogies I like to make is that sometimes certain players, whether it be football, basketball, whatever, they'll get drafted to a certain franchise, and for whatever reason, it does not click. It does not work out. And they find themselves in a few different uniforms later. And then all of a sudden it does click and everybody says, "Oh, how great is this?" But the reality is, that person is a byproduct of the other stops along the way. And so, I mean, I don't know. I am so unbelievably, one, thrilled, grateful, two, three, obviously looking forward to a heck of a party. Um, and I would love to know if you have any charges with respect to the opportunity at hand.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited, I'm looking at the list right now of who's in the mix, and we got some heavy hitters, so it's super super cool to see my name in that lineup, and I appreciate you and Eric including me in it. And yeah, just kind of a culmination of people being honest and doing the work, people channeling um channeling energy into output, charging material. Um, so yeah, no, super, super excited. Eric Summer, incredible painter, great eye. Always happy to be in the mix with him and what he's up to. You know, Mangan and David Haynes, like just two two buttes of humans right there, who both are making really great work. And so yeah, it's been so cool to kind of get to know you guys a little bit, and yeah, feed off of each other. And then like, someone like Sage Vaughn, like I knew about him in my earlier skateboard days from his work and in that world. And the art he's been making for, yeah, decades, I suppose. So that's really cool to see my name and kind of a list with him as well. Um, Hetty Douglas, come on, like it's gonna be a great scene, man.
It will be. It will be. Uh Special shout out to Sage. Um he and I have actually known each other for pretty darn close to 20 years now.
Okay, right on.
Um Unbelievable sense of humor, and one of my favorite things about, any kind of art form is the sense of humor that sometimes will just poke shine through, like, driving a car and seeing that sun kind of clip through the forest or whatever.
Yeah,
And also want to mention Bentley Brown, and his whole family. Obviously, he's the son of the great American painter Frederick J. Brown. And I think that, like you said, to put the work forth honestly and to display it, with full sincerity, um, makes me really, really proud that we're going to be connecting that night.
yeah, yeah. No, it's and the way you guys have kind of curated all this together, it's everyone's got their own thing, that they're doing their own way of kind of embedding honesty into their material. But there's a thread there, like there's a thread that's kind of connecting all of this. And yeah, it's awesome, man. Super, super excited to be in the mix.
Well, Joseph, I can't begin to tell you enough how much I appreciate, you know, you and I developing the dialogue, meeting that day at Mott Projects in Catskill, and you know, all I can tell you is I'm so thrilled for us to kind of, you know, um, have a cheers type moment on September 9th.
Yeah, man. Definitely looking forward to it.
Well, thank you as always, and wish you just the best of days and weeks until the countdown of linking up in New York.
Right on. Thanks, John. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.